What is your Tinder horror story? We were supposed to meet at 9 p.m. He fell asleep and called me at 9:30 when I was already at the carnival. I told him not to bother coming as I didn't want to see him. He asked for another chance and I agreed. Unfortunately, my dad got really ill and had to spend the next 6 weeks in the hospital with me visiting him daily. I had no time for dates and he got extremely mad. He made a fake Instagram account which he used to follow me and everybody that I followed. He then saw me in a friend's Instagram story and showed up to the restaurant we were at. He called a whore and a liar and we had to threaten to call the police because he would not leave. This guy asked me if I would be interested in dating his dad. Pretty sure that guy was a catfish of said dad pretending to be guy. Well, I've only gone on one Tinder date. We talked for a bit and I agreed to pick her up at Starbucks. She looked nothing like her pictures, but I thought I should be nice and at least hang out with her for a bit. We went to her place and the entire house reeked like cat pee, like saturated. Then as she proceeded to show me her massive collection of animal tail butt plugs, she screamed at her chihuahua and smacked it right on the nose and without missing a beat just asks if I want to make out on the couch. I awkwardly sat down and pretended to look at my phone and made up that my grandma was dying so I could faux. Met up with a Tinder girl at Dave & Buster's. She brought me there for a goddamn pyramid scheme sign up presentation. Yes, I respect the hustle. Happened to me in college. But this was in the early 90s, so no Tinder obviously. Met this attractive girl on campus. We had coffee, then a lunch. Nothing ever physical, but she seemed into me. One day she calls me, asks me to come by her office. I'm thinking weird, but okay. I go. She meets me and she brings me in this room. And there's about 10 other guys around my age all sitting around this conference table. We're all looking at each other with these WTF expressions on our face. Then the girl comes back in with her boss and the sales pitch started. Matched with my BFF's fiance after the engagement party. Screenshots of everything and lost my BFF because I don't play that. I was uninvited to the wedding. Marriage lasted 18 months. If I'm reading this correctly, you were uninvited to the wedding because you were a good friend and showed them that their fiance was on a hookup dating site. He thought that I would embarrass him at the wedding. It is possible, because he was stupid enough to not only match with his fiance's best friend but also, once I told him off for it, he still wanted to hook up, and he was running for public office. Shocking, I know. She just wanted a baby and culturally had to be married when popping one out. He gave me my first kiss. I didn't hear from him for 2 days. On the third day he texted me that he had been arrested. Haven't heard from him since. Talked to him for 2 weeks before we went out and no red flags, so we ended up going out to dinner. I said I hadn't been out in a while because I was trying to save money for a washer and dryer. He told me instead of saving for that I should save for a boob job. I didn't even know how to reply, so he followed up with, "No, it's not a bad thing. My sister and mom both had small boobs and got boob jobs and they look amazing." This is all before the waitress even brought our drinks. I just got up and left. Fresh off a breakup on campus. Match with this really good looking girl who is talking pure filth. Obviously I'm just an idiot with a hurt heart, so I don't question much. Head over to her place a few days later. She insisted I come over on a certain day at X o'clock. Usually I would have been sketched out, but it was the middle of the day on a B1G10 campus. What exactly could go that south? Half hour in, her husband came home. I was being used in revenge plot. No more Tinder. So I met this girl on Tinder and went for a lunch date. We had a pretty good connection, so we decided to have dinner as well. After having a few drinks, one thing led to another and ended up back at my place. Had sex and went to sleep. Middle of the night I wake up. She's intensely staring at me while she's crouched behind the bed. I asked her if everything is alright. She said yes and got back into bed. I thought little creepy, but probably nothing to worry about. She lays down to cuddle with me and she's wet. At the time, I was like, damn, I must just be a stallion. Fast forward to the morning. She's gone and there's a wet puddle beside the bed. She peed on my floor. I still don't understand it. I had a bathroom, but maybe she just got lost and couldn't hold it. I did not hear from her again. First date. She wanted me to get into a bar fight with the perfectly friendly guy who'd bought us a round of shots that night. Why? Because she found out he was a Scorpio. Astrology chicks are crazy. Chatted with this girl for about 2 weeks. Every conversation went well and eventually I got her number and she started sharing nudes and speaking dirty. Late on evening after a stressful workday she talks me into driving an hour to come get coffee with her. She spends the next hour and a half non-stop talking about her ex and how she has to see him at the bank and all this personal upset ex-girlfriend stuff. She cuts me off anytime I try to speak or change the subject right back to him. A day later I get a text about how I didn't do any talking and I was too boring to be anything more than just friends with. She got irate when I pointed out she would not allow me to speak and only wanted to talk about her ex-boyfriend when we have never once had a slow or boring conversation before meeting up. Found this really hot woman close by, talked for a bit and went out for pizza then back to her place. A few weeks later I met her kid, who absolutely adored me. Now we live together and have another child. Deleted Tinder. Never again. Met a guy. Decent conversation. Smart. Funny. Mutual nerdy hobbies. We decide to meet up at the local gamer bar and play some games while having our first date. Get in. Sit down. Dude has no teeth. Says a hack dentist told him they all had to be removed. Couldn't get dentures due to budget. Needed to wait for bone shards go fall out of his gums, etc. Proceeded to spit all over our food while talking, which granted, I knew he couldn't help. But if he can hide something this big from someone, what else could he be hiding? Plus I couldn't stomach the thought of making out with someone with no teeth. Not Tinder but Match.com, and right in its infancy too long time ago when it was just weirdos doing online dating. I matched and met up with a girl. She was way hotter than me, like crazy hot. Way out of my league. The date was going super well and we'd even made out a bit. Couldn't believe my luck. We decided that as it was going so well we'd keep it going and headed to a bar. We were getting cozy in a corner when a group of African lads came into the bar. I live in a very homogeneous white country to the point that would even be noteworthy, especially at that time. She got up off where we were sitting and began shouting abuse at the lads who came in, saying they didn't belong here and dropping the N-word several times. I felt like that moment in a horror movie where the camera zooms in on your face and the background zooms out. I just got up and walked out. She tried to call me the next day to set up another date. I just ignored her. Clearly effing nuts. Too good to be true in the truest sense. I'll tell a story from my female friend from the military. When we discussed this very topic, she talked with him for a few days. Seemed very natural and friendly. He proposes to meet in a bar to grab some drinks. No red flags thus far. Things starts to get more weird during convo. Every other question is unusually personal, like traumatic experiences from childhood and first sexual memory. Young. Yet overall he seemed charming. Went to his place. After going to the bathroom she heard some unusual noises. Peeked inside the room he went to while she was gone. He was mounting the last couple of plastic covering on the walls floor. She left immediately after excusing herself. Contacted the police. And sure enough this guy turned out to be a soon-to-be serial killer. This happened in Norway and I don't know much about the following events, but my friend is pretty scarred by it. First date. We went to see a movie. She brought her sister along, without consulting me first, and I somehow ended up paying for both of their tickets. Bit of a doormat. Old me. We went to see Star Wars: The Force Awakens. Turns out, neither of them had seen a Star Wars film before, nor had any idea at all what was going on. Awesome. Date ended at McDonald's after the movie with 1 hour plus of her eating fries one at a time, and her sister talking sh about basically everyone at her work. To this day I'm not sure what that date was even about. There was no second date. Met at a Starbucks. She told me she was vegan and that she was cool that I'm not. I order a coffee with cream in it and she screams at the top of her lungs, in the crowded Starbucks, that I'm a cow murderer. I just paid for my stuff and left. Another time I met a girl from Tinder and we saw each other a few times. She had an ex that she still talked to, but hasn't had any feelings for in a few years. So I go to her apartment and this place is like a shrine to him. Pictures of him on every wall, and it wasn't just from when they were together and she never took them down. She just moved to this place a month prior, so she recently decorated her apartment with his face. Really creeped me out and felt like I was going to be some sort of sacrifice to get him back. I have a couple, not from Tinder, but met guys on Match back when I was single and ready to mingle. First one seemed quite nice, but was a bit controlling on the first date, deciding where we went without asking my opinion etc. But I figured some girls like that level of dominance, so maybe he just read me wrong. I agreed to go on a second date and he wouldn't tell me where we were going other than London. I told him I needed to know, just so I knew what to wear, but really it was for personal safety reasons. He told me to wear a dress, which I never do. When I told him I wasn't wearing a dress, he got stroppy with me. When I pushed and said I needed to know exactly where I was going with someone I just met, he told me I was being difficult and was totally out of order. He lost his temper and got quite abusive, calling me a stuck-up b and a tease, so I blocked him. There's a few, but the first that comes to mind. Met this really cute girl on Tinder. She was really cool and we got along pretty well. I forget how our first date went, but after hanging out a few times I went over to her place and we hooked up. It was pretty great, except that I forgot in her bio that she was fluent in German. And so mid-coitus this very cute blondie is shouting in German, which, no offense to the Germans, isn't exactly the sexiest language in the book. It was so unexpected and I was terrified. Another time we went to grab a drink at a bar and she obviously knew the bartender and we were all chatting it up. She was hanging on me and we had some PDA going on. After the bartender left I asked how she knew him, and she told me that he was her ex-husband. I was a bit shocked because we were all 20-somethings. When she went to the bathroom he leaned over and asked me how I took to the German in bed, and I, still a bit shocked, said it's alright. He winked at me and she came back. Weird girl, nice guy, calm tower drinks, and he still remembers me when I go in for a beer. God grant me the constitution to take things in stride like this man. I don't even get far enough to experience horror stories. I went to his place and we hooked up, but after he goes, so you wanna know what I'm really into? And I was like, sure, and then he grabs my foot. I have a really irrational fear of people touching my feet, so I ran the hell out of there anyway. I get to the living room on the way out and it turns out to be his parents' house, and I look at his mother and see she was my old therapist. Oh wow, that just got better and better, or worse and worse. It completely destroyed my self-confidence. Got very few matches and the ones I did get were either fake accounts, didn't reply, or unmatched me almost immediately. Eventually Tinder decided to just put me out of my misery and banned me for no apparent reason. Not really Tinder, but another site long ago. Met this nice looking girl. She was really beautiful. Started talking and eventually got a time for a date. Waited for more than an hour until she finally showed up. She wasn't as good looking in real life. Like, the pictures were clearly not hers. Even better, she had some friends with her. Eventually we end up with around 20 people, most of them wearing swastikas under their shirts and talking about how great Hitler was. Got kinda scared. Afterwards, a week or so, I got a message from another person on the same site asking me why I dated his girlfriend. We became friends after I told him the story.